What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing, and yes, I am indeed alive and well. I am happy to have all of you back after the long hiatus that we've had. Life has been insanely busy. I'm sure you can all relate. Obviously, there's work, there's personal. On top of all of that, there really hasn't been a whole lot to talk about over the last few months after the draft. So now that we are only a few weeks away from the preseason's 2 weeks away, which is crazy. Got a lot of fun stuff coming. Today's episode, we're going to go into my 12 bold predictions for the 2025 season. Super pumped for this one. The next few episodes are going to be lists similar to this. Next week, I'm going to be doing possible breakout stars for the Packers. I'm going to do a list of players you might not be talking about that you should be talking about or thinking about. Lots of fun stuff coming. Once the preseason starts, we'll do a recap of each game. And we'll kind of get into some more of that at the end, some of the stuff that's coming up. Before we get into the bold predictions, I just wanted to cover a quick transaction that happened this week that I don't think is getting talked about enough. The Packers signed running back Israel Abanikanda from the San Francisco 49ers. He was actually drafted by the Jets, I believe, back in 2023. Obviously, I wasn't doing a podcast back when he was drafted, but I absolutely loved him coming out of the draft back in 2023. I thought he had Packers written all over him. We'll get to that in a second. Back then, though, there really wasn't a place for him. They had A.J. Dillon there, who at that time, before the Stinger injury, before having a pretty bad 2023, a lot of people thought, well, he's the future running back for the Packers. Aaron Jones had just signed his deal, so they weren't going to take him high. He ended up being drafted later than I thought. I thought he was like a third-round pick. He ended up being drafted in the 5th round of the 2023 draft by the Jets. And ironically, you guys might remember him a little bit from the Hard Knocks for the Jets, the year Aaron Rodgers got there first. He set like every school record at the University of Pittsburgh. He had a 9.88 RAS score, ran a 4.38 40. He's 5'10", 220 pounds. The dude's a freak show. He can catch out of the backfield. He's had a lot of injuries so far in his career. Last year he got hurt, I believe, with the 49ers. He tore his ACL his first season in the league, I believe. I think his stats, 22 carries, 78 yards, something like that, if I remember correctly. So he's going to be wearing number 23, which I think is interesting. So basically Jair's old number. So, this is kind of true, kind of not. Like, players that don't have a high probability of making the team, they'll usually give them numbers like in the 40s or, I don't know, depending on the player, maybe like upper 30s, like a 39, 42, whatever. Him wearing 23 makes me think there's a decent chance he might make the team, and we'll talk a little bit about that. He's actually involved in one of my bold predictions in a little bit. He's going to probably compete with Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks to make the team. I think he's got a good chance at beating one of them out. I think Chris Brooks has the inside chance. I think Emmanuel Wilson is a little bit expendable, although I do like him still. I think he's got a lot of promise in the league. Chris Brooks blocks. He can catch. He showed a lot of promise running the ball. I think he's going to be – they're probably going to keep 4 running backs this year if I had to predict. Chris Brooks is a special teams guy. Obviously, I'm a pretty big fan of his. I don't think he's going to beat out Chris Brooks, but I do think Abanikanda can reach or actually beat out Emmanuel Wilson. So – without further ado, let's get into my 12 bold predictions for the 2025 season. First one, Jordan Love is going to look like the 2023 version of himself and throw for 30-plus touchdowns and 4,200 yards. Okay, so if you guys remember the wrap-up episode after the Packers lost to the Eagles, the first episode of Titletown Talk, I've been talking about ever since then. I don't think Jordan actually regressed this last year. Obviously, there were the injuries. He dealt with, the knee injury, the groin injury. Then he hurt his shoulder, I believe. Whatever injury he got against the Bears, that sort of hampered him in the playoffs a little bit. Not only did he have the injuries, he had the most drops in the NFL. He had the most drops on third down in the NFL. The wide receiver room, we talked about this in that recap episode. No one in that receiver room took a step and got better than they were in 2023. I think there was an issue with Matt LaFleur blending the run game with the pass game. They weren't able to use play action, which is something that he did a ton of in 2023. I think on top of that, he had a little bit of pressure with his contract. He missed a lot of training camp waiting for that. He missed a ton of practice. I could go on and on. There's a ton of excuses that I feel are legitimate as to why Jordan didn't keep that consistent 2023 level in 2024. So, again, we never saw that second half of the season Jordan Love in 23 that we saw in 23 in 2024. I do think we started to see a little bit of it. If you guys remember the Cardinals game, he had an insanely good game there. He had a good game against the Texans, the Dolphins. He played really well against the Seahawks. He had stretches last year where I felt like he looked like he was getting back to that. But, again, he would take one step forward and then he'd take another step back with an injury, right? My bold prediction, number one, I think he's going to look pretty damn close to, if not equal to, maybe even better than that second half of 2023 Jordan in 2025. I think he's already a top 10 quarterback. I think probably top 12. I don't think he's any lower than 12 personally. He ended up, if you guys watched the top 100 NFL players, he ended up at 63 or 68 or something like that this year. So I think after the end of this season, we're going to be talking about him as a top 7 quarterback, maybe even top 5. The irony of it is, I actually think he could be the best quarterback in the NFC. I know a lot of people are crowning Jalen Hurts, and rightfully so. Super Bowl champion. Obviously, he beat the Packers twice last year. But I do think at the end of this season, we're going to be talking about him as potentially the best quarterback in the NFL. He's been super sharp in camp so far. He was really, really good in OTAs. If you guys get any video of him, just watch his release at the top of his throw. He looks like it's snapping off of his hand a bit more. His release looks quicker. I see a difference in his mechanics this year. I really do think if he can kind of keep with, his feet, making sure his feet are in the right place and all that stuff, I do think, he's got an incredible arm talent. We all know that. I do feel like there's going to be a pretty big step forward. This is year 3 for starting for him. I think that's a massive thing no one's talking about. Year 3 is typically where we see quarterbacks kind of take that big step into stardom if they're good, and this is year 3 for him. Year 6 total, year 3 starting. I think he's got a ton of weapons, right, that we'll talk about a ton the next few weeks. I think the weapons all have a ton of reasons to play well this year. Obviously Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks are going to year 3. I think they're going to be a massive part of this. Romeo Doubs, I don't think he's going to be back in 26, but he's going to be playing for a contract. I think the offensive line got way better. They brought in Aaron Banks, which moved Jenkins to center. They got rid of Josh Myers. I think this is going to be a really good season for Jordan. For the team to reach their ceiling, to be a Super Bowl champion this year, to even win the North, right? Jordan's got to be at that 2023 level, and I think he's going to be there. So far, he's got the 8th highest odds to be MVP. I'm not a betting man. I don't have the balls to bet. Those of you that do, tip of the cap to you. I think that MVP bet is a really good one for him. I'm just going to say that right now. So that's number 1. Bold prediction number 1, Jordan Love is going to look like the 2023 version of himself. Throw for 30-plus TDs and 4,200 yards. Number 2, grab onto something for this one. This is probably the boldest one here, the second part of this. Marshawn Lloyd is going to be a real factor in 2025, which will lead to Josh Jacobs' release in 2026. That part, the second part, is probably the scary part for some of you. Marshawn Lloyd, I'm insanely high on him. He was my favorite running back last year in the 24 draft. He was Daniel Jeremiah's number 1 running back last year. Lloyd probably had the most unlucky rookie season that I can remember. So he started out with an injury in camp. I believe it was a hamstring, and it was soft tissue. He got back to the team in week 2. He played against the Colts. Actually had a really fun run in that game that was called back from a BS holding call. He gets healthy again at the midpoint of the season. He's right about to come back, and then his appendix burst. Yes, that's not a made-up story. That is a real story. The dude literally burst his appendix after coming back from injury. That is some of the worst luck I've ever heard. So he was a top 100 pick, right? He was the number 1 running back for Daniel Jeremiah, who I think is the best draft expert. I think he was number 2 or 3 for Mel Kiper. McShay loved him. A lot of draft people really, really liked him, including myself. He's very different than any other running back that they have on the team. He's actually a different running back than they've had in recent memory. Obviously we saw Aaron Jones be a home run threat. He had several long runs in his career, but this is more like the Amon Green home run threat that we're talking about with Marshawn Lloyd. This guy, I think, could take it to the house on any given carry. Super explosive. He's got really good vision. He's got really good hands out of the backfield. He caught a lot of passes in the UFC offense that he played in. He's just a big play waiting to happen all the time. This is kind of where the prediction goes a bit further. I think there's going to be a few games this season. This is where I want you guys to remember this. There's going to be some games this season where he outrushes Josh Jacobs, and we're all saying, should he be the starter? Should he get more carries than Josh Jacobs? Mark my words on that. Again, the second part of the bold prediction, Josh Jacobs being released in 2026, is probably the more, I don't want to say crazy, but definitely bold, right? He has a cap hit in 26 of $14 million, okay? So they're going to look for a way to lower that number regardless if he's on the team or not. He's going to be closer to 30. I believe he's going to be 28 next year. That's the same age they moved on from Aaron Jones, right? His deal was a 4-year, $48 million deal, right? $12 million a year. That was always a 2-year deal and a we'll see after that, a team option after that. That's how the Packers do their contracts, right? All of them. So I think they're going to have a choice at the end of the season. If he has another season like last year, guys, and we don't see that jump from Marshawn Lloyd, we don't see anything from the other running backs, I think he'll be back, right? And again, if you asked me to bet, again, not a betting man, I would probably bet that he's back in 26, but I do think, I'm going to stick to this one. I'm going to bold prediction, remember it here. We got Marshawn Lloyd, we got Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, and Izzy Abanikanda, who we just talked about. I think all of them could have, they could be strong options in 26. I don't think if we don't see that 1,300-yard season from Jacobs, we see a 900-yard season. We see maybe less explosive runs. Maybe he's a little bit less effective breaking tackles, whatever. I think the Packers are going to look to move on from him. Okay, so again, this one's very bold. And it's more of a vote of confidence in what I think Marshawn Lloyd's going to be versus what Josh Jacobs isn't, right? So again, I'll take that as the number one thing for this prediction. If you're not familiar with Marshawn Lloyd, pull up a YouTube video and watch him. You're going to know him real quick. You're going to start hearing his name a ton. In fact, I've already heard it a ton from the Packers people in the building, the reporters that have been there in camp. You will know his name going into week 1. Mark my words that. Number 3, Dontavian Wicks will emerge as the number one receiver that we've been waiting for. This one's not that bold. You guys know I brought it up on multiple occasions this offseason. I think Dontavian Wicks is a star in the making. I think this is probably the most unlikely of all the predictions I made, though, just because I think it could be Romeo Doubs, it could be Jaden Reed, it could even be Matthew Golden, who become a number one wide receiver in this offense. I actually think it could be Tucker Kraft. We'll get to that in a second. This prediction is more based on the fact that I think we're going to see a really good version of Wicks this season, similar to what we saw in the end of 2023. And again, it's not a coincidence that when Jordan Love looked like, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFL during that 23 stretch, Reed, Wicks, Doubs, they were all playing their best football. Even Tucker Kraft was playing really well. Bo Melton, the cornerback, which we'll talk about in another episode, I'm sure, he was playing really, really well at receiver that year. It's not a coincidence that when these guys stepped up and played their best, the Packers played their best on offense. Jordan Love played his best on offense. Wicks still got open at one of the highest clips in the league last year. I don't have the number in front of me. I couldn't find the number, but he was number one in separation percentage for multiple games, top 5 at the end of the year. The problem is he just dropped the ball too early. If you guys go back and watch that Vikings game, the first Vikings game, he has like 4 drops in that game. That could have been like a career game for any receiver, let alone for Wicks. Once he started dropping passes early on, they just didn't go to him very much. And obviously, I think Christian Watson was the only receiver last year who took a step forward. Whenever Watson's played, Wicks hasn't. Okay? So I got to say it's a very interesting proposition, right? But I think that we're going to see a really, really good Dontavian Wicks in 2025. This season, I think he's going to have Jordan's trust. He's going to be heavily relied on with Watson being out. I think it's going to take a little bit for Matthew Golden to get up to speed. And then Jaden Reed, obviously, I think he's probably, again, if I were to bet, probably the number one most likely to be that top receiver for the Packers. But he doesn't really play in the 2 wide receiver sets, right, because he's not a blocker. Dontavian Wicks is the best blocking receiver on the team, and he's insanely good at it, right? Probably one of the best receivers blocking we've ever had. So I think he's going to become that number one wide receiver. He's going to have 1,000 yards this year. He's going to have maybe 70, 80 catches, right? I think regardless, we're going to go into 2026 with Reed, Wicks, Golden, and we're going to feel really, really, really good about that receiver room and Savion Williams. Remember that. So that is number 3. Dontavian Wicks is going to become that number 1 wide receiver that we've been waiting for. Number 4, Tucker Kraft will get all pro votes and develop into one of the best tight ends in football this season. This one's kind of weak, right? This one's kind of a cop-out. I thought Tucker was one of the best tight ends in the game last year. I think he was a top 10 for sure statistically. I think he was more like a top 7. Anyone who's gotten a mic that's on that coaching staff, any of the players this year that's mentioned it, they've all said, hey, we need to get Tucker the ball more. Tucker needs to get the ball more, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all the time. His focus, LaFleur said this, Tucker said this, his focus this offseason was improve his ability to get open against man coverage. So that means work on his release patterns, get a little bit shiftier, a little bit quicker. That tells me that they want him to be a big part of the pass game. Last year, I think because of the fact Luke Musgrave was hurt, I think he had to do a little bit more blocking. I think he was relied upon in blocking a bit more than he maybe should have. Even with that said, he had 600 yards. I think he had 8 touchdown passes or catches. I think he, again, had a really good season last year. You bring the blocking ability in, you add the receiving talent that he has, he's going to have a really big season. In the NFC, too, again, I think NFC-wise, again, for being an all-pro, it doesn't matter for all-pro, right? But if you look at the NFC, the only tight end I'd 100% take over him is George Kittle. And I think that's going to show in the Pro Bowl voting. I think Brock Bowers is better. There's a few others who I might take over him as well. In the NFC, it's Trey McBride from the Cardinals. I love Sam Laporta on the Lions, right? But I think we're going to have there's a good chance that he's going to be an all-pro this season. Again, when we say all-pro, I include the second team. Maybe that's a cop-out also, but I think we all need to get ready for a really, really big season from Tucker Kraft. I think he's going to be one of the more reliable options. When Jordan needs a bucket, they're going to go to him. I think we're going to see a much improved athletic profile from him this season. I'll throw a bonus in here too. I think Luke Musgrave is going to look really, really good this year too. Okay? Because Luke Musgrave was hurt for such a large chunk of last year, they didn't really run a lot of 22 personnel. They didn't run a lot of 2 tight end sets. I think this season they're going to do a lot more of that, and I think it could be absolutely deadly. Again, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, 1 receiver. That's 22 personnel. Imagine all the different things they could do for that. Put Golden in at receiver. You put Musgrave and Tucker in at tight end. You have the running backs who are super versatile, can do a ton of different things. Put Lloyd in the backfield with Jacobs. I just think there's so many things you could do. There's just so many chess pieces that we have on this team. To me, I just feel like Tucker is going to break out, and I think that their use of 22 and 2 tight end sets is going to be a big part of it. So that's number 4. Number 5, Lukas Van Ness will take a step this season and have a similar season to Rashawn Gary in his 3rd season. Okay. I want to rewind a little bit back to the 2020 season. It's very hard to remember. I know. We were all going through hell with COVID, yes. The only people that weren't going through hell were us Packer fans when the season started. That was, my opinion, the best team since the 2010 season, right? It's easy to forget how, we'll say average, Rashawn Gary was his 1st and 2nd season. When we compare those 2 seasons to Lukas Van Ness, they're really similar. The reason we didn't notice how, average, maybe below average Rashawn Gary was at the time is because Preston and Zadarius Smith were starting. He wasn't asked to play this massive role the way that LVN was in 24. Okay? So again, I'm not saying LVN's been good, but he's not been bad, and I would argue that he's been probably more consistent than Rashawn Gary was his first 2 seasons. So that's year 1 and 2, right? Similar trajectory, right? Rashawn Gary average to slightly below average his 1st and 2nd season, same with LVN. Rashawn Gary in year 3, 2021, remember Zadarius Smith got hurt early on, had a back injury, quote-unquote back injury that he actually probably didn't have. He was just pissed that he wasn't a captain and all that stuff, whatever. He didn't play hardly the whole season, right? So Rashawn Gary got to start, and he absolutely went off that season. And it's really, really easy to forget how good he was. I even forgot how good he was, and you guys know how dialed into this I am, right? In the 21 season, Rashawn Gary had 81 pressures. He had a 21% pressure percentage, which is absolutely crazy. That was number 3 in the entire league. Okay, then You fast forward to year 4, 2022, he was trending for 15 sacks, had an insanely good start, then he tore his ACL against Detroit. So I think LVN is going to have a similar trajectory. He's already had a really good camp by all accounts. He actually, first day in pads today, he beat Rasheed Walker a couple times. Now, again, do I see LVN being an 81 pressure guy this year, being top 3 in the NFL? No. I think he could. I don't see that being the trajectory here. But I do think we're going to see a big jump from this year. You know, we all like to pretend like the players don't hear all the chatter. But I guarantee you guys that LVN has been copying and pasting tweets from Packer fans, experts saying, trade for Trey Hendrickson, trade for Myles Garrett. And again, I was one of those people, right? I think he's heard everything the Packer fans have been saying about him. If that were me, I would be insanely motivated to absolutely light the league on fire this year. And I think he's going to do that. I think he's going to have a really good season. I think we're all going to forget about, you know, how bad we thought the pass rush was going to be. I think we're going to be really, really happy with LVN this season. Next one, Devontae Wyatt will be the Packers' most consistent pass rusher in 2025. Okay, this one's kind of a low-hanging fruit, to be honest. Back in 24, last year, he was leading the Packers in pressures, and he was arguably, at least by PFF standards, was one of the best interior pass rushers in the NFL, right? He got injured, he came back, and he slowed down. We never really saw the same level last season. I think he was playing through a lot of injury. I don't have the injury in front of me, I apologize. This is Devontae Wyatt's 4th season, which is insane, by the way. They've already exercised his 5th-year option, but he doesn't want to play on that 5th-year option. He wants to get a new deal in 26, and if he has the season I think he's going to get a massive deal, and he'll deserve it. The interesting piece to this, though, for Devontae Wyatt to take that next step, Kenny Clark is probably going to play a lot more nose tackle this year. And Kenny Clark's effectiveness is really, really important to Wyatt's. Okay? So, in order for Devontae Wyatt to reach his ceiling, I think Kenny needs to be better than he was last season. Now, I may have mentioned this on a previous episode, and I think it happened this summer, so you guys wouldn't have heard me say this, but it looks like Kenny Clark had a foot injury that he had been dealing with the entire season last year. So, again, you think about a position like defensive tackle, especially when your entire game is based on strength and explosiveness, right? That's Kenny's entire game is leverage, strength, explosiveness, whatever. Having a foot injury can have a massive impact on that, and he kind of admitted so, right? I think Kenny's going to have a lot better season. I don't know if he's going to be like, 2020 Kenny Clark, but I think we're going to see a lot better Kenny Clark, which is going to allow Wyatt to be much better, right? So, again, I don't think this one's crazy, but I do think he's going to be a guy that is consistently going to get pressure on third down, up the middle. It's going to free up LVN and Gary. Speaking of Gary, the next one, Rashawn Gary will finally eclipse 10 sacks and earn his first All-Pro selection. This one is something I feel really confident about. I'm going to get to a stat in a minute here that blew my mind. And maybe some of you saw this. If you did, you'll know why my mind was blown. Last season, it was Hafley's first season. There was obviously a clear emphasis on being a better run defending team. Okay? And Rashawn Gary is part of that, right? As good as he's been at rushing the passer, he's always been a guy who gets sucked in really, really early on plays, and he just ends up getting run right past. We saw it so many times throughout his early parts of his career. He would go for the quarterback, guns blazing. They would do like delayed handoff, and the guy would run right past him, right? Last season, Rashawn Gary put a clear emphasis on getting better at run defending, and we saw that, right? I think that led to him being less effective rushing the passer, on early downs. And I think that was pretty noticeable, right? A lot of us, including myself, felt like he had a down year, at least in comparison to how he was previously as a pass rusher, right? But here's the stat. He had the 6th best pressure percentage on third down last season at 23.5%. So literally a quarter of his pass rushes on third down, he got a pressure. That was 6th best in the NFL, like I said. So it kind of backs that up, right? Early downs, he was really focused on stopping the run. Third down, obvious passing situations, when he actually tried to rush the passer and put an emphasis on it to get there, he was getting there, right? This pressure percentage was better than TJ Watt. I think it was better than Myles Garrett even. I don't have the other players in front of me, but again, we have to remember, if you put an emphasis on something, which again, in addition to an emphasis on run defense, this was also a brand new scheme, right? So I think it's crazy but he's never gotten 10 sacks in a season. He's only been 9.5. That's the highest he's ever gotten. I think when we see LVN play better, we're into year 2 of Hafley's scheme, we're going to see 10-plus sacks from Rashawn Gary. I think he's going to get 15. That's my prediction early. He's always been a guy who gets a lot of pressure. He just doesn't finish really well, okay? So I think he's going to finish more this season, and we're going to see a lot closer to the early Rashawn Gary than we did this last season. Again, we've seen flashes where he looks like a top 5 guy. There's a reason he got paid what he got paid. He got his extension in 2023. That first part of the season, again, let's do the timeline quick. He was a top 5 pass rusher in the league in 22, right? Then he tore his ACL. I think he was leading the NFL in pressures before he got hurt. Tears his ACL, comes back insanely early against the Bears and whoever the first 3 teams were in 23. He was like trending. He was having an Aiden Hutchinson type season from a pressure percentage perspective. All the way up till that Detroit game where the Packers beat him on Thanksgiving. There was a ton of stuff we saw from him there. He just really fell off after that midpoint in 2023. And then last year, we just talked about it, right? I think we're going to see something a lot closer to what we saw in 22 this season. So Rashawn Gary, he knows he's going to be better. He's been hearing all the shit that we've been talking, pardon my French. He knows he's got to be better. He's got to play up to that contract. I think he will this season. Next one, big one, Edgerrin Cooper will become an all-pro and take a massive step this season. So just so you guys know, he did earn all-pro votes last year, which as a rookie is crazy. I think he got 2, which, again, not a ton, but like there were players who thought he was that good. Because remember, the players and coaches vote for the all-pros. It's not fan-related like the Pro Bowl. So last season, I mean, he got drafted. I was stoked about this. I was almost certain they were going to draft him. I believe I told my cousin I was positive they were going to draft him. They brought him in for a visit. He was just jumping off the page as Packer. He was really like a pass rush specialist, quarterback spy type of guy at Texas A&M. I knew he'd come in and have an impact. I just never thought he'd come in and earn all pro votes. There were stretches at the end of last season, you guys remember this, especially against the Vikings, where he looked like a Fred Warner caliber linebacker. So in 2025, I think he's going to put it all together. We're going to see him reach another level. He put on some weight. I believe he's up to 240, which he would play to like 220 something last year. So, 15 pounds of girth. And, he's still an explosive athlete. He's had a full year in the league, right? The full year in the scheme. I think he probably got really prepared to play this season over the offseason. The sneaky part of this, too, is him and Quay Walker together are a hell of a tandem. I've never been a Quay Walker fan. He's probably going to get paid here before the season starts, and I think it's probably going to be an overpay, to be honest. But I think he's going to prove me wrong, and this was a little bonus, bold prediction for you guys. We saw stretches last year where Quay looked insanely good. After that first Bears game, I remember Andy Herman from Pack-A-Day said this, I'm done with the Quay Walker thing. I don't want to hear about it anymore. He's not good, whatever. Then Quay comes back and proves him wrong, proves me wrong, proves everybody wrong, and just has a crazy stretch of games there, and then he got hurt. So I think if he can play to that level that he played middle of last season next to Edge Cooper, this linebacker deal is just going to be off the charts, right? And that's going to help Edgerrin Cooper be better. Again, Walker has to play for a contract. He didn't get the 5th-year option, so this is his last season under contract. He's going to want to get paid, and I think he will. He's probably going to get paid before I'm ready. Again, he's going to get paid here before the season starts. Probably going to be $13 to $15 million a year, which I think is an overpay. And then I think throughout the season, we're going to see him play up to that contract. Last thing before I move to the next one, we're almost done. If there's one guy on the Packers this year that's going to become a star, I would put my money on Edgerrin Cooper. Next one is a fun one. Nate Hobbs will finish with a better PFF grade this season than Jair Alexander on the Ravens. This one's interesting, right? I want to say from the jump, I know PFF grades aren't perfect. There are a lot of people who don't like PFF. This is more of a reflection of how I think Hobbs is going to play in general this season. I think Nate Hobbs is being slept on insanely too much. We'll just say that. I think he's got a chance to be really, really good this year. And I think that this scheme is exactly what he's been waiting for. Again, we can say a lot of things about Goody as a GM. I thought his 2018 draft was pretty bad outside of Jair. I don't think they really even got anyone good after that. The 2019 draft, they got Gary. There were a few good players in that draft that I liked. The 2020 and 2021 classes outside of Jordan Love were terrible. Obviously, he's made up for it in 22, 23, and 24, and I think 25 as well, to be honest. But the one thing you cannot say about Goody is that he's not a good evaluator of NFL talent. The pro personnel team on the Packers has proven if we should trust anything about the Packers, it should be their ability to find people that are NFL players already, whether it be free agency, waiver wire pickups, right? I'm not going to go through all of them really quick, but every time he's spent money on a free agent, they've been good, right? Adrian Amos, Za'Darius and Preston Smith, Billy Turner, right? Last year we had Jacobson McKinney. And then you look at what he's done with like waivers, right? Devondre Campbell, they signed him off of the Cardinals practice squad. He becomes an all-pro. Rasul Douglas, I believe, is also in the Cardinals practice squad. Sign him off of that. We all remember what he did in 2022, right? Or 21, sorry. Goody has given us a lot of reasons to trust him, and I think we need to trust him again. Nate Hobbs is 25 years old, 24 maybe, 24, 25. He's due for a breakout. I really believe. I think Nate Hobbs is going to be one of the best corners in the league this year. Remember this conversation. He's already been a savage in practice. They've already had to told him to chill out. He's been a little bit too intense. I think he's been hitting people when he's not supposed to be. But I think he's a savage the way he plays the run game. The cool thing that I think they're going to do, and this has already been sort of seen, we talked about this after they signed him, I think he's going to play outside corner on early downs. Javon Buller will be in the slot. So this is like running downs, possible passing downs. Then the obvious passing downs, your third downs, your second longs, whatever. I think they're going to move him to the slot, and they're going to bring Carrington Valentine in for Bullard. Sneaky 1-2, guys. Carrington Valentine is going to be very good this season too. This cornerback room for the Packers, believe me, I was a guy who really wanted them to draft a corner. I thought they had an opportunity to do it in the second round there. They didn't. Trey Amos is the guy I'm talking about. They went with Anthony Belton instead. You guys know how I felt about that. I think there was more to the Amos thing with injuries and whatnot, whatever. Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs are going to be a very good group of corners. Now, the depth after that is concerning. I like Kamal Haddon and Kalen King, but it's concerning. And I like Bo Melton, actually. Yes, Bo Melton, the corner. But remember this conversation, guys. Nate Hobbs is going to be really good this season. He's going to surprise a lot of people. I think he could have like a 4 or 5 pick season, but I think he's going to be better than Jair this year. I think Jair's going to get hurt again. I'm not trying to wish that on him. Nate Hobbs, when he plays, is going to be very, very good. Okay, we got 3 more. This one is fun. Also not super crazy. The Packers' offense and defense will both be top 7 units in 2025. So again, I'll keep this pretty short. Last season, they were top 10 on offense and defense, both in traditional stats and DVOA. We talked about it after the season. I think we're going to see an even bigger improvement this season. Top 7 in both. I don't know where they're going to fall in that top 7. I'm not going to make that prediction. But out of the 2 units, I think the offense can be the best offense in the league. I think the defense has like a top 3, 5 ceiling. The range of outcomes is pretty narrow, in my opinion. Okay, the floor for both units is like top 12, barring injury, obviously. But I think we're going to see a dramatic improvement from both the offense and the defense. Offense specifically, I think the offense was, they were really good in the run game last year. I think we're going to see a really, really big jump in the passing game. You guys already heard my predictions on Wicks and Jordan Love. Remember what we said here, guys, top 7 in both. I also think the special teams is going to be top 20, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a lot. The next one, the Packers will win the NFC North in 2025. Okay? So I want to just make this point really quick. I know that the quote-unquote experts on TV and the podcast sphere are not really experts, right? In fact, they're usually the dumbest of all of them. They have to try to remember the entire league, and they often miss things that are very obvious to fans of those teams, not just Packer fans, right? But there's almost nobody picking the Packers this year to win the North. To me, I prefer it that way. The less people talking about the Packers, the better. The way the season ended, the lack of, big moves, I think it's kind of making people forget how good they really were last year. Let's look at the division really quick, right? The Lions should still be the favorites. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. But I think there's a lot more question marks than people are saying. I've been seeing, that, they got one of the best rosters in the league. They're going to win 13 games, so on and so forth. I don't personally think they got any better from a roster building standpoint. They traded out Carlton Davis with DJ Reed. That's about it, right? They had a draft which I thought was pretty lame. Tyleik Williams in the first round. They Isaac Tisla, the receiver who I liked for the Packers, they got him in round 3, which was a massive reach. I don't think he's even remotely worth that. They got Tate Ratledge, who I really, really like at guard. I think he's going to play center for them. But they lost Frank Ragnow on their offensive line. Aiden Hutchinson's coming back from an ACL. I think he's probably – we're never going to see – I don't mean to speak bad about a player because I love Aiden Hutchinson, by the way. But I don't think we're going to see that, first few games of last year type of level from him this season. Now, maybe he will be at some point. Maybe it's later. But I think we're going to see a little bit of regression from him. Now, he's still going to be a really good player, right? But I think it's going to be a bit slow, right? I don't think DJ Reed is better than Carlton Davis at corner. I think they got great safeties. They got good linebackers, right? But who is rushing the passer outside of Aiden Hutchinson? I'm not asking this to be snarky. I don't know who is going to rush the passer for them. Okay, now obviously last year they had Brian Flores, and I'll get to that in a second, who was super creative at blitzes, and they were really good at disguise. I don't even know who the coordinator is this year, right? Losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn is a massive loss for them. I think it's going to take a few weeks for them to even get on solid footing. And the Packers get them in week 1. I think they're going to beat them in week 1 with, I want to say ease, but they're going to convincingly beat them in week 1. I think that's going to set their season into a little bit of a spiral. Again, I think they're going to still win at least 10 games. They're probably still going to make the playoffs, but I think the Packers are going to win the division. If we go to the Vikings, right, again, I think that they got a really good team, right? But I think there's just no way J.J. McCarthy is going to be better than Sam Darnold was. We all remember how he turned into a pumpkin at the end of the season, right? But Sam Darnold was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. There were games where he literally carried that team. There were games where he won those games for them, not the team. Sam Darnold won it for them, okay? J.J. McCarthy's just not going to be that good this season, okay? The roster itself, I think they got, they got a little better, I guess, right? I like their pass rush. I like their secondary to some degree. Particularly their corners. I'm not a big fan of their safeties, Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith. I think Harrison Smith is a massive liability. I just think that defense is very scheme dependent, and I do think that the NFL is going to catch up to that Flores scheme this season. I think he's going to need to be a lot more creative than he's been, and I think they're going to catch up to it. So I don't see the Vikings win the NFC North. I think they can still win 9, 10, 11 games, right? But I think the Packers are significantly better. And then we get to the Bears. Roster-wise, coaching-wise, Bears are much, much better. I like almost every move that they made this offseason. I think they got a little old on the defensive line. I think they overpaid for a few guys. I don't think their pass rush is even near good enough to win a lot of games, especially on defense. Don't like their safeties that much. I think their corners are overrated. Don't like their linebackers. I don't know how they're going to stop the run. So, again, I'm not a huge fan of the Bears, but the offense could be really good, right? But the one thing nobody's talking about, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to take a step. I think he very well could be, I don't want to say ruined, but I think I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1 overall pick type of quarterback. And remember this conversation. I'm not wishing ill upon Caleb. I always root for Caleb, especially with how many people pick on him for painted nails. Like, dude, let the dude paint his nails. Who cares? Anyway, he was seeing ghosts last season. He was super indecisive. His mechanics were sloppy. I don't think he can read a defense the way he needs to. He was really, really bad against pressure. We've seen these things I just went over kill careers for quarterbacks. Okay? So, again, I think they could win 8, 9 games, maybe 10, but they're not winning the division. So, I think there's the Packers have a really good chance. No one's talking about them. Keep sleeping on them. The Packers are going to win the North. Last but not least, this might be a chicken shit prediction, but the Packers are going to reach the NFC Championship in 2025. Not quite ballsy enough to say they're going to reach/win the Super Bowl. I feel like I'd be too much of a homer if I said that. But I'll keep this sort of brief. I'm going to go through the NFC really quick. Okay. Everybody's talking about the Commanders. The Commanders have a higher probability of reaching the Super Bowl than the Packers. Okay. I think they're insanely flawed. I love Jaden Daniels. I like the Debo pickup. I guess. I think their offensive line's solid. I think the offense is going to be more than okay. But from a defensive perspective, I think the Commanders are old. They're slow. Excuse me. I don't think that they have a ton of flaws. I think that they're going to be a good team. I think they're still a playoff team, but they are not this juggernaut that's going to compete with the Eagles in the NFC East. I think the best team in the NFC outside of the Eagles and the Packers is the Buccaneers. They need to be taken very, very seriously, and nobody's even talking about them. So I actually think the NFC South, Buccaneers are going to come out of that division with relative ease. They're going to be something difficult for the Packers to deal with. I'm just going to say it now. As far as the NFC West, I'm going to get to the Rams in a second, but I think the 49ers are going to be much better this season. I think the Seahawks, the Cardinals can maybe compete for a wild card. Don't think they're going to win the division. I just want to stop and speak about the Rams really quick. The Rams are being way overhyped, guys. I do not see it at all. Maybe I'm missing something. Throw it in the comments if you disagree. Love their defensive line. I like their wide receivers. Obviously, Devontae is one of my favorite players ever. Love Puka. I like their tight end room a little bit too. But their offensive line is very vulnerable. I don't think they have a single good corner or safety. I don't think they have any linebackers that I trust. Matt Stafford's already hurt. They're actually concerned about him. It's an arm injury too, guys, which is scary, right? I think it's an elbow or a shoulder. He's old. He's aging quickly. I think he's 38 this year. I think we're going to see a big step back from the Rams. I think the Rams are still going to be good. They're going to be, if I had to bet money, I think they're probably still going to win the West. I think that they're coached well enough. I don't think the NFC West is strong. I think it's solid. They're not a Super Bowl team. And I will bet money on it now. I do not know why the hell they're a higher betting favorite to make the Super Bowl than the Packers. I do not get it. I'm not trying to be a homer. If you guys disagree, I would love for you to send me a message. I'd love to chat through with you. I'm not trying to shit on a team. But I think the NFC is pretty wide open. Outside of the Eagles, who are still the best team, although I do think they lost a lot of talent, I don't think they're going to be this big juggernaut that everyone's saying they are. Still the best team. I don't have the balls to predict a Super Bowl championship for the Packers, right? But I do think they're going to at least make it to the NFC Championship game. They're going to get the furthest they've gotten yet with Jordan Love, and I'm super, super excited to see it. All right. That was my 12 predictions for the Packers in the 2025 season. I'm going to go through them again, scroll up to the top, and go through them one more time. Number one. Sorry, guys. I'm literally scoring in real time. Jordan Love is going to look like the 2023 version of himself and throw for 30-plus touchdowns, 4,200 yards. Number two, Marshawn Lloyd is going to be a real factor in 25, which will lead to Josh Jacobs' release in 2026. Dontavian Wicks will emerge as the number one wide receiver that we've been waiting for. Try to say that 5 times fast, guys. Tucker Kraft will get all-pro votes and develop into one of the best tight ends in the league this season. Lukas Van Ness will take a step this season and have a similar Rashawn Gary third-year jump. Devontae Wyatt will be the Packers' most consistent pass rusher. Rashawn Gary will eclipse the 10-sack mark and earn his first All-Pro selection. Edgerrin Cooper will be an All-Pro and take another massive step. Nate Hobbs will finish with a better PFF grade this season than Jair Alexander. The Packers' offense and defense will both be top 7 in 2025. The Packers will win the NFC North in 2025. And last but not least, the Packers will reach the NFC Championship game in 2025. That's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for sticking with me during the summer break. I saw some of you still downloading episodes throughout the summer when I wasn't even posting, so I appreciate that. Again, we're going to go back to kind of a one-time-a-week schedule until the season starts. I might throw a few in there outside of that. When the season starts, though, we're going to do 2 times a week. We're going to do a game recap every week and a game preview for that upcoming game. And I'm going to start doing videos. Some of you guys have asked, hey, do a video, have a YouTube channel, right? I know I already put the podcast on YouTube, but some of you enjoy watching instead of listening. See my ugly mug. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Once we get into our new place and I have my office all set up, I will start bringing video to you guys. Lots of good stuff coming, but I really appreciate you guys listening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks a lot for listening.